We're going to do sort of a quick introduction of JavaScript. This isn't really intended for someone who's completely new. This should really be more like review. So some things that we might do might be things that you're unfamiliar with, but some of the basics of programming you should already know and remember, right? So we're going to kind of assume some of that. Now that being said, I'm still going to talk about what I'm doing, but I'm going to go through things fairly quickly. So we're going to create sort of a choose your own adventure sort of thing, or like an interactive novel, whatever you want to call it, in JavaScript. It's going to be pretty short, but you can make yours longer, of course. So first thing first, I'm going to set up a plain text editor. So in my Launchpad, I'm going to text edit. If you're on a PC, you're looking for Notepad, which that should already be set up in plain text. For me, I have to change the setting. I need to go to Text Edit, Preferences, and I can tell it plain text. And it still looks the same, but if I close this and reopen it, there we go. So here's my plain text editor. Since I'm doing JavaScript, it does need to have some sort of HTML shell, but it can be extremely basic. It doesn't have to even be proper. So I'm just going to put the bare minimum in here, just enough to actually have it run. Alright, so just to make sure this works, I'm just going to make this a hello world, and let's save this. Alright, and we'll call it adventure.html. So we're doing JavaScript, but it still needs to be a .html file because we're doing this as an embedded JavaScript, so I'm not going to keep them separate. I'm embedding them for right now just because it's faster for this. So we can see it here. Unfortunately, I forgot something in the preferences. I forgot to take that off. That's okay. I can just modify this file. So I'm just going to do a slow double click to, well, you know what? I'll delete the extension, I'll rewrite it, and I think that will ask me, there we go, that's what I wanted, use HTML, and let's see if it works. So I'm going to open with, so we're not going to play with HTML really, we're going to play with JavaScript. So to start things out, let me make this bigger so you can see what I'm doing. Will Command Plus work? Command Plus does work. Great. So we'll do some indentations, right, just so that way you can see how everything lines up. Script, right? So we're opening HTML, we're closing HTML, we're opening body, we're closing body, we're opening script, we're closing script. I have these indented because they're nested inside of each other, right? So body opens before HTML closes. Script opens before body closes. So just sort of your standard appearance to make it a little bit easier to read when you're nesting things. Alright. And then inside of here, right, so this code is inside of the script tags, so I'm going to have that indented as well. So I'm going to do document.write. Let's just make sure this works. So I'm going to do the exact same thing I already did. Hello world. If I save it and I run this, there we go. We know it's the new one because I did not make it capital, whereas I had before, and we saw that that changed, right? So that's fine. Now to actually create some interactivity, right? So I decided that I'm going to call this Dino Battle because we, of course, need a super exciting title. And now I need some actual things, right? Like something that actually happens. So just to start things off with, I'm going to ask the user if they actually want to play, right? So that gets us a very simple way to bring in the confirm or a choice, right, in our flow control. So to give them a choice, we do confirm, which is basically like an alert box, but it has a choice. So, do you want to play? So what is an alert box? If you aren't familiar with what an alert box is, it's a pop-up. But you don't really have a choice. It just gives you the choice of okay, which not really a choice, right? There's one thing. So if I run this, there we go, example of an alert. And then do you want to play, right? So that's there, right? Now, right now when we run this, we do have a confirmation here, but nothing happens whether we say yes or no. So we need to actually make a choice, right? So for that, we need a conditional. Now I'm going to go ahead and delete the alert because I don't need that. I just wanted to show you the difference between the two. So for a conditional, we do if, there's going to be stuff in there, and we open some curly braces. We close the curly braces. And then if we're doing an if, that implies that there's also an else. So it doesn't have to be an else, but that's the implication. Let's make that lowercase. There we go. So what goes in here is like whatever the condition is. So if we're saying, do you want to play, then the condition is yes, they want to play, or no, they don't. Now to do that, that means we also have to actually have a variable here that is storing their answer. So first, let's create a variable. So we can do var user play, right? And then here we can say that user play is equal to whatever they respond in here. Now this confirmation gives back two responses, either true or false. So OK is true and cancel is false. So we say here, if user play is equal to true, then something, and if not, then something else. So let's do copy and paste that just to make it a little faster. I'm going to indent that a little bit more because it's inside of this conditional. And then I'll put one here as well. All right, we'll just have two different messages so that way we can differentiate the two and make sure it really works. So I'm going to run it. Do you want to play? Okay. Oh, well that didn't quite work, did it? Let's try again. Cancel. So both did it the same way. What happened there? Let's try doing an alert just to make sure that what we thought was happening is actually happening. So we're going to tell it to alert us user play. This will show us whatever's being stored in that variable, and then we can make sure it matches there. Undefined, but we defined it. Oh, I see what happened. I accidentally used two equal signs. So two equal signs is when you're checking if something is true or false. A single equal sign is to actually store that. So that was my mistake. Let's try again. There we go, ready to play. And if we do cancel, I am no fun. Now I want a line break in there, so that way it's not all run together. There we go. Alright, now we do have a little problem here. I'm not sure if you noticed, but when it's running, it's not actually updating the page until after after the prompt is done. So like for example, if I put Dino Battle, and I save it and I run it, notice that it hasn't changed up here, right? It's doing this question here before this actually prints. And that's something that's sort of interesting about the web and about browsers. So different browsers interpret the script different ways, and over time they've also changed how they interpret them. So in the past, this would have worked. It would have written this, and then it would have done this, and then all these other things. This code has still already run, but it hasn't actually put it on the page until after the whole script finishes, and that's kind of the standard now. So it is a little bit of an issue. So instead of document.writes, we can go ahead and do alerts for now. Remember we played with those earlier. And later on we'll talk about how we can get around this, right? Because it's, I think, a lot more interesting, and I think it's more dynamic if we can actually put them on the page itself. But like I said, that's something that we'll do later in an additional video where we'll expand on this. So let's change these two alerts. There we go. Oh, but the BR tag doesn't work in alert. That's okay. Do you want to play? Yes or no? Ready to play, right? And so now we can do the next bit. For simplicity as far as a new coder goes, we're just going to keep nesting these if-else statements inside of itself. Now, as far as simplicity of code goes, this becomes a mess very quickly. So for a really big program, you wouldn't want to do this. But for just starting out, it's an okay way to do things. So in here, I'm going to add another one. I'm going to add 2 spaces for each of these. Right? And see how it starts to get confusing already? Like, this is another if inside of that if. And it starts to get very messy. So let's see. Oh, and I forgot this confirm up here, right? So we need this too. And this needs to be indented. Okay. So let's say something. Let's create just a little prompt to kind of start out the game. That's a lot of text all in this confirmation box, so I think I'm going to actually create an alert here and put all that inside of the alert. So I've just copied and pasted, close the parenthesis, and then here I'm just going to have a question of whether or not you want to take the sword. And this can be, we can just call that sword. And now let's see, in here, this is where they have taken the sword or not, right? So I want to have a little story here where the dinosaur crashes through the forest, and then whether or not you take the sword, whether or not you took the sword, will decide whether or not you survive. But the prompt ahead of time is not going to differ depending on whether or not you took the sword, right? It's just the dinosaur crashes through, and then depending on if you took it, then the next set of text will determine whether or not you survive based on that. So that means that this can be another alert. I don't like how it keeps making my things capitalized. Let's see. There's probably something in preferences here that's doing that. Yeah, we can turn off some of those things. There we go. Semicolon. Close that semicolon. There we go. We'll keep this a little bit more tame. Okay, so that's if you took the sort, and if you don't, and then let's see what else. Okay, so and then regardless of whether you win or not, it is now game over here. Right? So let's see if all this worked. It's a little messy, but we'll talk more about that in the future. Oh, we did something that it did not like. Alright, let's look for any semicolons that we didn't close, or any curly braces. Ah. Nope, still something else. Well, was it that? No. We have this curly brace, right? We've opened it for if the user wants to play. And then we've got some text here, right? And this is all still part of playing, right? So we don't close it yet because they're still playing. Then we've got another curly brace that's open. So now we have two curly braces open. This is part of the sword bit, right? Whether or not they took the sword, right? And so then when we get here, this is not part of that sword bit still. So we need to close the curly brace. So now we're back down to one open. We open this curly brace. This is where they haven't taken the sword, right? So that's two open. That ends here, right? So now we close that one. And then we have a game over alert, right? And then we didn't close the other curly brace, right? We've opened another one for two, and then we've closed it here, right? And now we're left with one curly brace open still, right? And that's the one way up here where they decided they wanted to play. We forgot to, well, I forgot to close it right here. So all of this is where they said that they wanted to play, right? And this is where what happens if they didn't, right? So somehow I accidentally deleted that because I had it earlier, but that's okay as long as we fix it. So we can save, we can refresh. There we go. We can see it's working. Do you want to play? Okay. Ready to play. There we get a little bit of a story. Yes or no. Da da da. Etc. Game over. Right? So now I can do more with this, and I will do more with this, but that's a decent start, and we'll talk more about it in the next video.